All right, let's dive into one of the Bible's most fascinating and, frankly, most debated mysteries, the Nephilim. Who are these strange figures that show up in Genesis? And what does their story really tell us? Let's get into it. So, everything kicks off with this one super cryptic verse in Genesis. I mean, this single passage has sparked literally thousands of years of debate. It talks about giants, this mysterious group called the sons of God, and their kids, who became men of renown. It's this incredibly brief description that just opens up way more questions than it answers. Which brings us to the big question, right? Just who or what were the Nephilim? Were they some kind of angelic hybrid? Were they just powerful humans? Or something else entirely? To even start to unpack this, we've got to look at the key players mentioned in the text. So, before we can even get to the wild theories, we've got to define our terms. We have to figure out who's who in this ancient drama, because their identities are really the key to unlocking the whole mystery. First up, the Nephilim themselves. The Hebrew word can be translated as either fallen ones or giants, and the Bible describes them as famous heroes, mighty men of ancient times. So this wasn't just some random side note. These guys were a big deal. Okay. Next, we have the sons of God. And folks, this is where the debate gets really heated. The text just doesn't spell out who they are, and that ambiguity has led to two completely different interpretations, which we're about to explore. And finally, we have the daughters of men. Here, the text is pretty straightforward. These are human women who, it says, had children with the sons of God. And those children were, you guessed it, the Nephilim. Now, for our first theory, and trust me, it's by far the most dramatic one, it's the idea that the Nephilim weren't entirely human at all. This theory goes all in. It says the sons of God were actually fallen angels. The idea is they took on physical bodies, mated with human women, and their children were the Nephilim, these powerful giant hybrids. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, the potential motive. Some scholars speculate this was a deliberate attempt to corrupt the human lineage, specifically to stop the prophesied birth of a savior. But hold on. This theory has some major hurdles. While it would explain the Nephilim's incredible size and power, critics are quick to point out that the text never flat out says the sons of God are angels. Plus, there's really no other mention in the Bible of angels being able to procreate with humans. So it's a theory that requires a bit of reading between the lines. And that brings us to the second major theory, which is a much more grounded, purely human explanation for where these giants came from. In this view, the sons of God weren't angels at all. They were powerful human rulers or maybe men from a godly family line. This theory suggests that early humanity was just genetically more robust, allowing people to naturally grow to exceptional sizes. So the Nephilim weren't supernatural hybrids, they were just remarkable, very large, but fully human heroes of old. This theory argues the sin wasn't some supernatural mixing, but a social one that led to widespread corruption. Now, just when you think you might be leaning one way or the other, the Bible throws a huge wrench in the works. See, the Great Flood was supposed to have wiped the slate clean, but it seems the giants came back. How is that even possible? Hundreds of years after the flood, we get this report from Israelite spies in the land of Canaan, and they claim to have seen the Nephilim again, identifying them as descendants of a guy named Anak. Their description says it all. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. So, who were these Anakites? They were a well-known tribe of exceptionally tall and strong people. Now, this post-flood appearance of giants really seems to support that mighty men hypothesis, suggesting that genetics for great size could have just survived through Noah's family. For supporters of the angel theory, this means there must have been a second incursion after the flood, an event the Bible never mentions. And all this connects to more familiar stories. Thinking about these giant tribes helps us put figures like Goliath into context. He wasn't some supernatural monster, he was an exceptionally large warrior from a family that was famous for its great stature. The story of the Nephilim has grown way beyond that one verse in Genesis. So for our final section, let's try to separate what the Bible actually says from all the legends that came later. I mean, the descriptions vary wildly depending on the source you look at. The Bible is pretty straightforward. They were powerful, famous men. But then you get into non-biblical texts like the Book of Enoch, and suddenly there are these evil giants who committed horrible acts. And modern pop culture? It's reimagined them as everything from rock monsters to fallen angels. It just shows how fascinated we are with this idea. So here's the crucial point to take away from all this. The Bible's only direct description is that the Nephilim were real, physical people, famous and powerful warriors of their time. They weren't explicitly called aliens or angels or monsters in the scriptural text itself. Ultimately, the text leaves us with a mystery. Were the Nephilim the hybrid offspring of fallen angels, or were they simply the greatest human heroes of a bygone age? The Bible gives us the clues, but no definitive answer. It's an ancient, cold case that remains very much open. So what do you think?